In my last video, we said we would look deeper at the various parts of the JavaScript runtime environment because the last one was just an overview. And that is what we are going to do today. We are going to look deeper into the JavaScript engine, and a great place to start with that is execution context. For a little clue on what they are, if you haven't heard of them before, the call stack is also sometimes called the execution stack. So that's a big clue, right? So the thing is, execution contexts, they're not that exciting. I mean, I know you're probably not here for the laughs. So this video, I don't think it will be too long, and let's just go for it, because it leads to more exciting topics. If you don't know what execution contexts are, you will do very soon, and from there we can get onto a lot more exciting and kind of applicable and applicable parts of JavaScript. Yeah, great place to start. So an execution context, what is it? It is like a container or wrapper around your code, so that as your code is executing, it has everything it needs. That is obviously quite vague, but you know, we'll flesh out the details over the coming slides. But that's basically what it is. It's like a collection of information that your function, even if that's code in the global scope, needs to execute. So anyway, let's have a look at the different kinds. Yeah, so looking at the types of the execution context, there is the global. As you can imagine, that is when you're not inside a function. So as soon as you start writing code, globally declared variables, function declarations, things like that, they're all in the global execution context. As soon as you enter into a function, that is the local or function execution context. And we've got a third type here. As you can see, it's strike through. This is the eval function execution context. Now, we're not going to talk about it today because basically I don't want to. you shouldn't really use eval. I never found a real use case for it. I mean, MDN has a page on it with a big section saying don't use eval. So, you know, if you want to find out about it, you can research it, but it's, you know, just don't use it. Don't use it. One less thing to learn. All right. So now that we know the types, let's have a little look at the phases. So each of those execution context types that we looked at, the global, the function, they're both all split into two phases: the creation phase and the execution phase. So the creation phase you can think of as the engine doing like an initial sweep, I would say. So it's kind of going through. It creates the global object. On the slides here it says GEC, global execution context only. So for the first the creation phase of the global execution context, it's going to make the global object. So that would be in the browser like window. Why I don't just say the window object is because obviously, you know, you can do window dot whatever for something in the global space, but you can also just reference it directly. You don't have to do the window prefix, right? Because when you're writing it, when it's executed, the engine knows that you're referring to the global. Anyway, more on that kind of stuff later. But it also, the creation phase, the value of this gets bound. So that's another thing that a function or some code might want to reference. It creates a reference to the outer function. Again, this is just a quick overview. We'll go into everything in a bit. And it also looks for all the function and variable declarations and puts some memory aside for them. So what I mean by that is it doesn't initialize them. It just says, okay, you've declared a variable A. I'll remember that. That's all. And it also does the hoisting in the creation phase. Again, if you don't know what hoisting is, that's another topic, but it is done in the creation phase. The execution phase of an execution context, it's been through all the creation phase, it's kind of prepared all the things, and execution phase is actually executing the code. So, yeah. There's more steps, as always. You can get into as much detail as you want. This could be a 5-minute video, a 3-hour video, but we'll go for the overview, huh? All right, let's have a look at the global context creation. All right, so I made some code, and I'm not even going to run it. I just did a screenshot, some nice highlighting there. I'm just going to look at the steps of the creation of the different kind of execution context. So if we just loaded a page or run it from VS Code on Node or something like that, the first thing that's going to happen before anything's executed, the global context is made, the global execution context. The stuff that I've highlighted is what happens in that phase. So var A, some spaces put aside for that, the const B, and then just the function definitions, so it knows that there are functions to call. So the functions OK and great. As we can see on the bullet points that I've done as well, nice little bullet points. So I said earlier the global object was set. The this value, at this point it's set to the window object, the global object. The variables are declared but not assigned any values, and a reference to the functions made. And that's the global context creation. So the next step, all right, now we're going to execute the global context. So as I alluded to, the variable A will get assigned its value, some string. The const variable B will get assigned its value, 15. The console log gets executed. Any code, it's all getting executed line by line. We're logging the value of this, and then right at the bottom of the code there's a function call. So in the global context execution, we are executing the OK function. The parameter there, let's go, is going in. And what happens now is there is a function context created. So the function execution context that we mentioned is now going to get created. So what's in that? There is, for this OK function, it's got the value of what was passed in. So it's let's go, that is OK param. It's got this arguments object, array-like object. So it's got a length. So if you passed in 2 parameters, there would be a 0 and a 1. But yeah, for this we just got 1, so we've got 0, let's go. And this, is accessible within the function. Like we've got a console.log arguments in there, and that's what it will come out with. Not used so much these days because of REST parameters and stuff, but it's it's good to know it's there. What else have we got? So the value of this is again kind of like recalculated. It happens to be the same as before. It's the global object again, and C and D, the variables, some more space set aside for them, but not initialized. And I should say at this point as well, because we're talking about the call stack, and the execution stack, this function context has been put on top of the global context. So we have the global context down here. The execution context has gone on top in the same way that the function itself is put on. So they're obviously, very, very much linked. So looking at the execution, very similar to the global execution. It's just going through the code. So C is assigned its value, D is assigned its value. console log is executed. So since there's nothing too interesting about this function context, let's just mention that I obviously do some research for these things. Some stuff's a little bit confusing and you read a lot of articles and it gets skipped over. So something console.log, that's a function call, right? We didn't create the function ourselves. It's actually a web API again. So does that get a execution context that it created and executed? Apparently it does. And we can argue. we can argue in the comments. I mean, if anyone watches these things. But yeah, I read it. And there were some links to the ECMA script spec, and it really does seem like it does. So as a general rule, I would say any function call, so even internal, like an array method, will have a function context created and executed. And it looked like I felt the evidence was in the ECMA script spec. So yeah, there you go. Nice little fact for you. And that's quite a hard one to find out. Actually, for me it was anyway. Some real digging. And if anyone disagrees, I would love to hear from you, because yeah, it really was quite hard to confirm. But anyway, so knowing that any function calls have an execution context, let's go back to the code. So the function context getting executed, and now it's calling the function that I called great with the params. And again, it's just another layer, so this is getting stuck on top of the call stack. So we're 1, 2, 3 layers deep, or you could say 2 layers, because the global execution context is always there, whatever you want to do, sort of like floor levels around the world. And so for this one, we aren't doing anything special. Probably, same again. The arguments object is there, created. This value depends how much you knew already. You might be surprised that, considering great was called inside the OK function, that this is still pointing to the window. You might not, but it's worth mentioning. And the variable anything, there's some space made for it, and it's undefined. So for the function execution, there's nothing really happening here. Just one variable being assigned its value. All right, so that was a little run through of the creation and the execution phases of execution contexts as the engine goes through the code. And now like the kind of things it references, but thinking more kind of like specification side, like what does it actually contain, and kind of a little summary as well. So an execution context kind of officially has a let's call environment and a variable environment. So both the lexical and variable environments have an environment record, which we'll look at. And it's worth saying the variable environment is a kind of lexical environment as well. Confusing. So aside from the environment records, there is an outer environment reference. So this relates to scope and the scope chain, closures, things like that. So we will, I'll do a whole video on that, but not getting too deep into it, it is quite literally just the outside function. So if you've declared a function inside another function, then the outer environment will be the function above. But yeah, we'll look at that one. It's definitely something easier with visual examples. The next bit is this reference. And again, I mean, I know nobody's stupid, but like these are just, as I said earlier, they're just too big topics to cover, because this binding, it's not like a set thing. It depends on how you call the function, and you can doing a few different ways, and this value will be different depending on how the function was called. And yeah, so that's again another video. Great, so it's a lot of videos to make, right? Okay, so let's look further into the environment record. So an environment record has two types, a declarative environment record and an object environment record. So declarative has things like the function and variable definitions. It has module and function environment record subtypes. So like, as you can see, we're getting a few levels deep here. So yeah, speaking again about the function and variable definitions, it says here lexical environment has let and const, variable environment has var. So what I mean by that is the variable types are split, basically, because we have the lexical environment, the variable environment. Yeah, so they're split. Object environment record, global bindings, so the stuff to do with the window object, etc. Now, this might have sounded a little bit like yeah, whatever. So let me explain. Don't stress the implementation details. So you might have heard of, if you know about this stuff, you might have heard about the activation object. Where's that gone? I haven't mentioned it. You might be looking at this saying, what, Sheldon, you're totally wrong that this value was outside the lexical environment. Why did you say it was inside? Lots of questions about these details. And the thing is, as I said, I researched this topic a bit. And one thing that becomes painfully clear is that this is abstract stuff. So these are kind of ideas. It's not the direct representation of how the JavaScript engine works. You need to check ECMA script spec, and I know sound like one of those people. Oh, just check the spec. Like it's it's a long old thing, and it's not the easiest read. But if you're interested to the point where you're like, I need to know like where this is exactly stored, then you're gonna find it in the spec, because you read a lot of articles on the internet, they're all wrong and they're all right, because there's different ECMA script specs. So they were right at one point, they might be wrong later on, or it depends which version you thought of the spec that you were relating to. So, but the most important thing for me is like, I know what the execution context is, I know the phases that it gets created and execute, I know the kind of things that it holds, and I know the sort of ideas in the spec, that there might be this lexical environment, variable environment, I know the rough workings. But unless you're getting into interpreter development, these are all implementation details, so they're in the engine, like a V8 or SpiderMonkey or whatever. So yeah, don't worry about it. Just this is probably further than a lot of people would ever go anyway, because what the environment, the lexical environment, variable environment, etc., how that's implemented by the scenes, that is not going to affect your code in a way that you can control by the code that you write. Cool. So hopefully that makes sense. Oh, nice, inspirational last slide. You're amazing, and you'll only get more amazing. I must have been in a super good mood. So honestly, as I said, execution context directly, not that exciting. A lot of terms, and just kind of, it's like the call stack, but just storing information for it. Great. But if you don't know these things, or you're not 100% clear, then there's loads of other good stuff that will come from this, like hoisting, scope chain closures, and much more. Like an advert, on the radio, when they say, come to the garden centre. There'll be things for your garden, and much more. But the much more might just be jam. It's normally jam. Like basically, I'm not sure if there's more than these three initial things. But there might be. So, hey, why don't you stick with me and we'll find out. But definitely the top 3 things, and they're all very, very exciting. Very exciting if you like JavaScript stuff. Cool. So yeah, thank you very much again for watching the video, and I hope you learned a little something from it, or at least just, enjoyed yourself. Cheers. Bye bye.